Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. As people are coming in, if you want to go ahead and put your location and your affiliation, if any, in the chat, that would be great. We're very excited to be here. I'm Candace Davis. I'm one of the leaders of Indivisible Evanston, and we're hosting this program along with Indivisible Illinois, Indivisible Chicago, Indivisible Skokie, Indivisible DuPage, and Indivisible NWSOFA. So thanks for joining us. It's an exciting program with our favorite realistic optimist, Jessica Craven. We are in webinar mode this evening, so you're only going to be able to see Jessica and the panelists and not each other. But we have a chat you can use for comments, but there's also a Q&A feature where you can put in your questions for Jessica. So please use the Q&A feature so we don't miss your questions. Go ahead and put whatever else you want in the chat. We'll be monitoring that as well. Jessica's going to be sharing her latest updates and recommendations with us. And then we're going to have a Q&A session with another one of our leaders, Kitty Connect, where Jessica will answer our questions. We're recording this webinar. We'll send it out. We're going to send out a link to the recording and a copy of our slides tomorrow to anyone who's registered, so you don't have to write everything down. We'll be sharing some information about our sponsor organizations at the end, and you will receive those slides. So let's get right to it. Jessica Craven is an activist, organizer, writer, and the brilliant mind behind Chop Wood, Carry Water, our favorite daily newsletter that makes activism accessible and inspiring. She's a political content creator and the co-host of the podcast, The Practivist Pod. She's all about breaking down big issues and showing us how small, everyday actions can create real change. She's one of our all-time favorites for her information and for her informative but optimistic guidance. So take it away, Jess.
Thank you. Hi, thank you, Candace, and thank you, everybody. Okay, I hope everyone can hear me okay. I'm in a hotel room in DC right now, but thank you to all of the Indivisible groups who have invited me here tonight. Some of you, well, probably you don't know, but I went to college at Northwestern a gazillion years ago, so I have a soft spot for Evanston, and I still have family that live there, and it's a beautiful, beautiful place. And how lovely to see so many of you out. I mean, out on Zoom, but to see such a nice big group come out. I am a Indivisible member from all the way back to the very beginning of Indivisible. So I love to see Indivisible groups growing in this moment, which I'm sure you know they are. And it's just nice to see so many people showing up to talk about our democracy, the moment we're in, which is, of course, you know, a greatly challenging moment, but also an important moment, I think ultimately ripe with possibility. Not that I would wish for it to come about this way, but and anyway, just to see you all here is great. So yeah, I mean, I always like to, just in case you're coming in here cold and you're like, who is this lady? And obviously we've had a bit of an introduction, but just I do have this newsletter that is an action-oriented newsletter that's been coming out since Trump was elected the first time. It was, you know, very, very consistent from the beginning, 5 days a week, every week, in and out, year after year. But, you know, it grew very slowly, and there were lots of other activism newsletters. And then when Trump lost the election in 2020 and Biden won, almost everybody else doing those kinds of newsletters stopped. There were a lot of them. And then they all stopped. And I decided, well, you know, somebody's got to keep doing this stuff because, like, we still want to pass good laws and, you know, we want to keep going. And then, of course, January 6th happened and then everything went crazy. And so I just kept going. And my audience built and built and, you know, but then we went through the election and Donald Trump won this time. And since then, my newsletter has grown in a way I'm trying to think of, like, it's like an exponential, explosive growth. And I say that to tell you that we got a lot of new people in after this last election. And these are people who I'm assuming were even sitting on the sidelines the first term of Trump, or not that engaged or whatever, hadn't heard of the newsletter, but like, there are a lot of people in this moment who are motivated to defeat Trumpism and MAGA and authoritarianism. And, you know, they are eager and willing, and they are also really counting on the more veteran members And I count lots of you amongst those people who have been in this as long as I have or longer, in many cases. They're counting on us to lead the way. And so those of us who have been in this work since the first Trump or long before that get to sort of, what an honor in this moment, be the like seasoned veterans who lead newer people through this moment. And what we know, because we've been doing this for a long time, even though we're in a moment that is completely unprecedented, is we know that our actions have a great deal of power. And we know they work. We know that we are capable of winning elections repeatedly and continuously and, by large margins, which I like to remind people we've been doing since 2016 with like the one exception, really. Like we lost this last presidential, but other than that, our batting record has been pretty extraordinary. And it has continued to be extraordinary again since then. And we know how to do voter outreach. We are smart and organized. Many, many women, I would say majority women, but not only, of course. And we know how to do this work. And so I can't see your faces, although I wish I could. But what I do know is that I am talking to a lot of incredibly bright and brave and persistent and very capable people, because that's who makes up the resistance, if you want to call it that, or the opposition, or whatever you want to call us. And it's thrilling and an honor to be a part of it. I'm honored that you would want to listen to me. And so I'm just honored to be here with you. And yeah, the newsletter now, I find myself in this funny position where I still have the newsletter, and that's coming out 5 days a week still. And it's got way more subscribers than it ever has, because the country's in a very, very dangerous, precarious place. And I'm also, in 2020, I started making video content, not because I thought that I belonged on video at all, as somebody who, like, at the time wouldn't even put on mascara and, it was just not my interest. And I still barely do that. But I wanted to recruit phone bankers for the presidential election during COVID. And so someone told me about TikTok, and I decided to try to make a video there. Anyway, it has evolved into a situation where I'm now like a content creator, as well as making this newsletter. And I only mention it because, funnily, a great deal of our work now has moved over into this content creation sphere, which was always meant to be just a little bit of a sideline for me, but just so happens that at this moment in time, news and content online have sort of created the horrible situation that we're in, but also can help solve it. And for better or for worse, that's just where people are getting their political information now. And so we're in a very changing world. When we all started with our activism battles, we were watching the news on CNN, and, misinformation was something we might dimly think happened in other countries. Like there's just, a lot has happened in 8 years, and we find ourselves in this very precarious, dangerous place in many ways. We have a right wing that is deeply entrenched in social media, podcasts, cultural, podcasts and videos. They're not just doing political stuff. They're doing everything. They're trying in every way they can to seep into the culture. And because of that, they were able to pull off a narrow win for Trump. And I do like to remind people that when they use the word landslide to describe Donald Trump's win, that is wrong. That is factually incorrect. He did not win a landslide. He won a narrow victory by about 200,000 votes. He won a plurality of the popular vote, not the majority. As was actually just pointed out today, I heard Pete Buttigieg speak. He spoke to us, and that was one of the things he said too, that many of us took the wrong lesson from this election. We think Trump won some kind of massive mandate, and he didn't. He won in a squeaker, and he won the popular vote for the first time in 30 years, which I think is, I have my opinions about why that happened, and I think probably we can all surmise, like a lot of people decided to leave the top of the ticket blank. And that is something that I hope very much people will reconsider in the future, because unfortunately it gave Trump this idea that he had a popular vote mandate that I think was more a vote against Biden-Harris for things that had happened in Biden's term. And we don't have to go into that. But for whatever reason, he's here. Trump is here. He thinks he has a mandate. And here we are in this situation. So it is a precarious moment. We are living in a world where lots of information is getting spread on social media, but some things remain the same. What we know is that protesting still works. We know that we are still capable of winning elections. Um, there's been a lot of talk about how we're never going to have another honest election. Like I mean, I'm not someone who believes that the 2024 election was stolen. But when people say that to me, how do we know we're ever they could just steal any election they want? I just say, well, why didn't Elon Musk steal the Wisconsin election then? There was his chance. If that's what he does, then why didn't he do it there? He just got completely humiliated by us. And I say that to remind people that Donald Trump is not a wizard. He's not a superhero. He doesn't have superpowers. He got really lucky in November of 2024. He had massive misinformation and disinformation networks working on his behalf, I think many of which were in other countries. He had a moment where people were extremely angry at every incumbent in the world, basically, in 2024, either got voted out or lost massive amounts of vote share because of post-COVID inflation. And Biden was part of that. He had people not filling out the top of the ticket. He had third-party candidates working on his behalf. There was a lot of stuff going on. But more than anything, I think people were upset about the economy. Many Americans do not do things like follow the White House account to find out all the great stuff that Joe Biden is doing. So although Joe Biden did a lot of extraordinary stuff, probably more than any any president in my lifetime, sorry, I got distracted by the chat because I want to answer every single comment. I'm going to try not to look at the chat. I lost my train of thought. Sorry. Okay. Anyway, sorry. So Joe Biden did so much, but it was very hard to get that information out. And I speak as someone who was working very hard to try to let people know what he was doing. But Americans, really, a lot of them just did not get that information. So all of these things sort of formed this, it was kind of a vicious set of events that eked Donald Trump another victory. And, you could argue, and I do, that misogyny played a part in it and that Kamala Harris didn't have enough time to run her campaign, a million things. But we are where we are. Donald Trump won, and he and his administration are executing Project 2025. I'm not someone who likes to spend a great deal of time talking about all the awful stuff that's happening, because I think that we all know everything I don't need to give you a recap. There's no need. It's upsetting. And also, we spend all of our time staring at the bad news. So I like to try to focus, I don't want to blow smoke, but I believe that part of my responsibility is to lift people up and remind them of what they're capable of. So we do know that things are very, very bad right now. And I believe that in historical terms, this will be seen as a systematic attack on our government by hostile forces who were, trying to dismantle it, and who were behaving in incredibly sinister fashion, and also with very deeply corrupt intent. So we don't have all the answers on how that's going to play out. There's a lot of stuff happening with data acquisition that is very alarming. There's a lot of very alarming things. But what I will focus on instead is what we can do, where we are, and the fights right in front of us. Because one thing I have found ever since Trump stepped into office this last time, especially, is that we have a tendency to not only worry about the things that are actually happening right in front of us, but the left likes to latch on to, I don't want to say the left, some people I find not like to, trying to be careful with my language. I find that there are people who will latch onto things that may happen in the future. I call it sort of awfulizing. And it's a very understandable thing to do. But, I've heard that, the latest one was the April 20th, when they were going to declare the Insurrection Act. And then we were all going to get, they were going to shut down the borders. There was this terrifying Medium article that everybody was sending around, and people were really worked into a frenzy about it. And they were worked into a frenzy so much so that they didn't want to turn out to protests, which I think is really part of the reason that stuff gets spread around. And I've seen this play out a number of times now, just in the last few months. And last night I was on something where someone asked me about a new one. Oh, I've heard that, Steve Bannon is going to do XYZ this summer. And what I really encourage people to do, especially now that we've seen a number of these go by and the thing they're talking about doesn't happen. It's not that bad things don't happen, but that particular thing does not happen, is to really try to focus on the things that we have in the day that we know we are dealing with, and trust that we can deal with things that are coming down the pike if and when they happen, once we know they're happening. Because there's a lot to deal with right now. There are a lot of actual very bad things happening. So I encourage, at least the people who read my newsletter, I really encourage you to stick with the bad things we know are happening and take the things that you worry may happen and stick them on a sort of mental back burner, because a lot of the things that we worry are going to happen do not happen. And plenty of other stuff does, but I do think that there is sort of what the other side has on what their biggest tool, I think, on the other side is fear, right? They don't have popular policies. Nobody likes a single policy of the Republican Party anymore. Maybe cutting taxes, but only for middle-class people, not for billionaires. Nobody likes cutting taxes for billionaires. And the Republicans are not cutting taxes for middle-class people. They're only cutting taxes for rich people. So there isn't a single thing they're doing right now that is popular, but what they're good at is fear. They're good at generating fear. They're good at starting fear-mongering rumors. They're good at trying a lot of terrible stuff and just seeing what sticks. But a lot of it doesn't stick. A lot of it doesn't happen. And then the stuff that does happen, we go, okay, all right, well, this is happening. Like right now, we have an actual attack on Medicaid happening. So we're organizing, and that's what we do. We're organizing to fight it, and we're making progress because that is a real threat we know is happening, and we are able to organize and push back on that. So I'll kind of be sprinkling some tools, like some coping mechanisms in here, and one really important one, at least that I use. I don't want to tell you all what to do, but what I use is this something I know for a fact is happening? Is this something that I know for a fact is happening because I've seen it shared in several reputable sources? And is this something that I can do something about today? If not, put it away. When everyone was talking about this Insurrection Act thing or the martial law that was going to happen, I kept getting the same Medium article, and I probably 50, maybe 100 people sent it to me in a panic. But then I would read my trusted sources, Josh Marshall and I don't know, the Punchbowl and all whatever, the Atlantic, the New Yorker, or whatever I read, Mother Jones, all the Substacks I read, Robert Hubble. And I'm like, I'm not hearing anything about this. So when I start hearing about it from people who are there, I'll start getting worried. But fear is very contagious. So I really try not to spread it because it is not only contagious, but it is also crippling. And what happens when we get afraid is we decide, oh, I'm not going to fight. And that's what they want, right? That's what we want. So courage is also contagious. And one of the simple ways I can show courage is to simply not spread scary things that I am not sure are happening. So that is one thing I will say. And just this idea of staying in the day, with the fight that is in front of us. Because yeah, we've got, unless an act of God happens or something, we've got 4 years of this, right? Unless something happens that is unexpected. We have 4 years. That's a long time, right? Like we've just been through 100 days. God knows how we're going to get through 4 years of this, but I do know how I'm going to get through this day. And I really encourage you to think the same way, because if we try to think about how we're going to get through 4 years, we're all going to lose our minds. But this goes back to like Stoic philosophy. Sorry, I was a philosophy major, but Marcus Aurelius talks about this stuff a lot. It's really helpful that if trouble comes tomorrow, I will deal with it with the same wisdom and fortitude with which I am dealing with today's trouble. And that is what I want to encourage you to do as well. Try to stay in the day. And today, what we know is happening are attacks on Social Security. And I think that is actually, I know that people here know it's a very big deal. I think that will become more and more of a big deal as they continue to cripple that agency. We've got the attacks on Medicaid. We have Republicans' big reconciliation bill, which I'm going to talk about a little bit because it's important for us to understand exactly what is happening there. Other than that, Trump's really sort of squandered his first 100 days. He didn't pass any legislation. He signed the Lincoln-Riley Act into law, which unfortunately Democrats gave him. They couldn't have passed it without Democratic senators, and that is a permanent stain on those senators' records. But he did very little. He destroyed a lot, but he built nothing in his first 100 days. And he's also started to destroy the economy. So we're going to have a sort of economic crisis, right? We've got the Medicaid situation, we have Social Security, and then all the other agencies. I mean, again, I'm not going to do just a litany of the problems, but a lot of it, most of it, falls into one kind of giant bucket. I mean, obviously there's the attack on government systems in general, which is sort of the Project 2025 dream to destroy the government. That's their stated dream, right? But really, this is all about wealth transfer to me. And I feel like it's important to understand it this way because when we understand it that way, we win the messaging war. Because as we can see, by these giant crowds that Bernie and AOC have gathered and gather every time they go out and talk about fighting the oligarchy, America hates oligarchs. And I'm not just talking about Democrats. I'm talking about across parties, and there's a lot of polling to substantiate this. Americans, by wide margins, want billionaires to pay more taxes. They disapprove of continuing Donald Trump's tax cuts. And when they hear about what Republicans are planning right now, with cutting Medicaid and SNAP, which is supplemental nutritional assistance, and I'm sorry if you already know that. There's a lot of people on the call, so I just want to make sure everybody knows the same things. Cutting Pell Grants, cutting housing assistance, in order to pay for tax cuts for very, 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 very wealthy people and massive corporations, that is very unpopular. So one of the ways we fight back in this moment, I think, is to keep the framing that simple, because that is what's happening. Donald Trump is in the presidency for two reasons: to stay out of prison and to enrich himself and his friends. That's it, right? He doesn't care about this country. He doesn't love democracy. He doesn't love the Constitution. He doesn't have a moral fiber in his being, but he knows how to get rich. He knows how to grift, and we're seeing it, right? The crypto, it is astonishing. But we're also watching this larger grift, which is all the rich people at the top doing this giant wealth transfer. And that is the ground upon which I really recommend we stand and fight, because I believe that that is where we can really gather a massive army. And it may take a while. We may see a lot of things destroyed. Unfortunately, there is nothing we can do to completely stop the damage. But ultimately, I so believe that Americans, if we were united and could be reminded to stop fighting each other, could unite against oligarchs and win. And that's what we have to do. That is our task. And the great news is I've been listening to very inspiring speakers for 2 days because I'm at this conference. We've had Raphael Warnock speak, Senator Raphael Warnock. We had Pete Buttigieg speak today. We had Elizabeth Warren yesterday, Maxwell Frost. These are all lawmakers who talk about not just defeating Trump. And I think this is a very important distinction to make, but about creating something new, because the status quo has not been working. And the reason we find ourselves in this moment, Democrats have to take a lot of responsibility, because Democrats sort of, at least the way it was perceived from the outside, was that Democrats just wanted to keep circling back to the status quo. Oh, everything is fine if we just go back to the way we've always done things. But it has not been fine. And if nothing else proved it, this election proved it, that people just want radical change. And so a lot of them voted for Trump. They wanted lower prices. They want radical change. But he's not going to bring them lower prices or the kind of radical change they want. So we have this opportunity in this moment to not just fight oligarchs and stop Trump, but really stop and look at what we've been doing and what else we could do, and really start to look for a way to get to the things that Americans have been demanding and wanting for decades now and not getting. And so while I feel that this moment is terrifying, believe me, it is terrifying. I also recognize, partially because of my own personal experience, which I don't need to go into, but like I've had my own experience with loss and hitting various bottoms. And sometimes you do have to bottom out very, 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 very hard in order to see that what we were doing before was not working, and in order to be willing to try something different. And so I see this as a moment where we have two opportunities. We are either going to watch the end of the United States as we know it and descend into an autocracy that goes on for God knows how long and watch everything crumble, or we are going to have a very hard fight and many things will be destroyed. But out of the sort of ashes of that, we are able to pull Americans together, fight back against these very hard not to curse in this moment, oligarchs, these awful, amoral billionaires, and take Americans together and say, what do we want to build? What do we want to build that will finally work? And how do we do that? And I think that the exciting thing is, and then I promise I'm going to get really specific about Medicaid in 2 seconds, is that we have got an amazing crop of new lawmakers coming down the pike. One of the organizations I love so much is Run for Something, because they recruit young people to run for office, and they've been doing it since 2017, and they've been helping these people win school board races and state senate races and mayoral races. I always tell people, give your money to run for something. And since Trump was elected this second time, they've had 45,000 new people under 40 years old express an interest in running for office. And meanwhile, all the people that they've been bringing up through the ranks have become our Maxwell Frosts. He's from Run for Something. Jasmine Crockett, Run for Something. Danica Rome, in Virginia, Run for Something. All of these amazing people who are working their way up the ranks and becoming our next generation. So if and when we make it to the presidential election in 2028, I think Pete Buttigieg is going to run. I think J.B. Pritzker is going to run. I think Andy Bashir is going to run. We're going to have a really amazing set of people running. Well, we're going to have an embarrassment of riches, right? People with visions, people who want to really try to do something more and bigger than we've done before. Our job is to get there, is to survive. And that's going to be hard. We're going to have to do that a day at a time. And we're going to have to take it a fight at a time. And right now, as far as I am concerned, the fight is around Medicaid and it's around Social Security. It's around a lot of other things as well. There's a lot we need to make noise about, but these programs are so critical for so many people. Social Security, I don't need to tell probably many of you rely on it or use it or receive it. 73 million Americans, right? And DOGE has been systematically laying people off, getting rid of the people with the most expertise in the agency, firing IT people, messing with the computer systems, which are old and very delicately balanced, issuing new policies, trying to shut down field offices. And the great news is that there has been such massive outcry. We've managed to stop some of it. They have closed field offices and reopened them 2 days later, or, put them up on their website as this building is for sale and then taken it back down. They don't announce that they're backing down, but they have backed down. But even so, the computers there have been failing. Like, it's a very, very, very dodgy situation. So we are going to have to really keep up the pressure on them. Obviously, we also have disappearances happening. I mean, there's too many things for me to talk about here, but due process is another thing that deserves another 20 minutes of talk, but that's another thing we should be focusing on very strongly. And then I'll talk briefly, and then I'm going to stop about this Medicaid battle. So what's happening right now is, I'm sure you all know, again, you're veteran activists, so I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but the Republicans are getting close to having actual verbiage on their reconciliation bill. And the reconciliation bill, as you know, will basically come up with a tax and spending plan, budget plan for the next 10 years. And in it, what they're trying to do is extend Donald Trump's 2017 tax cuts for another 10 years. No, I'm sorry, permanently, and add in another $1.5 trillion in new tax cuts, taking the taxes off of Social Security, which sounds really good, but actually pulls money out of the Social Security Trust Fund, and then taking taxes off of tips, which also sounds great, but is expensive. So these cuts are going to add something around $7 trillion to the deficit. And then their idea of ways to pay for it is obviously to cut $880 billion from Medicaid, $230 billion from SNAP, and then miscellaneous other cuts. And they also want to pay a lot of money for mass deportation and to build new prisons for deportation. So what I want to say is that I know all of you have been making phone calls about this. We have been calling and we have been calling, and the great news, you have been showing up to town halls. We have been showing up to protests. We have done hands-off Social Security. We have done all the things, and the great news is they are working. And the way we know that is, first, we got that letter from the 12 House Republicans. Now, that letter was not as perfect as it sounded at first blush. They said, we refuse to make any cuts to Medicaid to the population for whom Medicaid was first intended. If you read the letter a little bit more closely, that's what it said. And what that means is we're still perfectly willing to cut Medicaid expansion, the ACA Medicaid expansion, but we don't want to touch the Medicaid that's for like children and people with disabilities, because they just know that's too unpopular. But they're still trying to sneak these Medicaid expansion cuts in, which will remove about 20 million people from the rolls. These are people who are living at 138% of the poverty line. So they're making $45,000 a year for a family of four, which I just have to like try paying for anything, making $45,000 a year with a family of four, let alone healthcare. You just are not going to be able to do it. In fact, I have family members who use Medicaid expansion and are terrified of what they will do if they lose it. So that's what they are going to come after. They are also going to try for work requirements. And work requirements, as someone explained to me today in a panel on the economy, is basically drowning people in paperwork so that they can no longer stay on Medicaid. So these are all ways for Republicans to cut and sort of pretend that they're not cutting or that they're being reasonable. So, but we've got a chance to fight this. So first we had the 12 Republicans say that they were sort of like semi-backing down, which wasn't a full back down, but it was progress. And then yesterday we found out that Mike Johnson is now saying that he's pushing that vote. They really wanted this done by Memorial Day. And I'll wrap up by saying the reason they wanted this done by Memorial Day is because this kind of bill that is so unpopular, when Americans start finding out what is in it, it only passes if they do it fast. They got to introduce it, get it done, pass it, and then Americans wake up and go, wait, what did you just do? But it's already done. So, but that's fortunately, because of you guys, that is so far not happening. And the fact that he just delayed this vote is because the committee that is dealing with Medicaid cannot agree on what cuts they're going to make. And that is because people are going to the town halls of people like Mike Lawler, who is intimidating people at his town halls and having them carried out and being an actual, really just a terrible human being, but we're scaring the bejesus out of him. And he is saying, I'm not going to sign off on that kind of Medicaid cut, because he is the one at these town halls getting yelled at by crowds of 700 people. And this has been repeating with all of these vulnerable House members. So I guess what I want to say is, in closing, I know this is hard. We're not going to get every result we want tomorrow because we're in a long, drawn-out fight. But this Medicaid fight, I believe we can win. I don't know whether we can stop Trump's tax cuts completely, but I sure as hell think that this fight is worth having and that there is a chance that we can, because there are also hardline Republicans who won't do those cuts if they can't, I mean, the tax cuts, if they can't get the commensurate budget cuts. And so we got to try. We have to try, because lives are on the line. Lives I know are on the line, and probably lives we all know are on the line. And we're going to take this one fight at a time. And we are going to keep talking to our friends and family. And when they say, oh, it's so awful, what can I do? I'm going to bury my head under the covers for 4 years and come out when it's all over. We're going to say there is a better way than that. There is a better way than just checking out of the news. Come with me to the next Tesla takedown. Just come with me. It's fun. It's 2 hours. Or come with me to the next No Kings protest on June 14th. Or come with me to this town hall. I just want company. Come with me. You can just hang out and I'm going to make some comments and you can just be my date. Or let me show you how I call my representative. It's actually not as hard as you might think, or whatever we're going to do. But helping people understand what the stakes are, helping them understand who the villains are, because when you say that billionaires are the villains, everybody can agree on hating billionaires. It's true. There's really not a lot of popular billionaires. And really, the last thing I'll say is that my experience has been that not doing anything and trying to hide under the covers leads me to a very bad place. Very fearful, very crippled with anxiety, where standing up and going, okay, I can't defeat Donald Trump single-handedly, but I can join arms with the people on either side of me, stand up for this country, stand up for immigrants, stand up for what is right on the budget, stand up for people who are impoverished, stand up for the rule of law, stand up for due process, stand up for the United States of America and our Constitution, stand up for pluralism and tolerance and diversity. And I will feel at the end of this thing like I was on the right side of history in a very huge way. And so that is what I invite you to do in this moment, is to stay in the day you're in, to keep taking your small actions, to know without doubt you are on the right side of history, and that every single one of us has the chance to show courage. And it is catching. It is a viral thing, courage. People catch it just from being near it. And so when we show courage, we also get a little more courage for ourselves, and we spread it around. And I know this is going to be a hard, long slog, but I know that a day at a time we can do this. Please remember not just the threat of what we will get if we lose, because that's a lot, but it's very stressful. But please try to remember also the vision of what we can attain if we can come out of this moment resolved as a nation that we want something different than a nation that serves only the wealthiest. So I don't know if that was helpful. I think now I should just answer questions, because otherwise I'll just go on forever and speak in a sort of word cloud. But I hope that was helpful, and I just would love to hear your questions, and we'll go from there.
Great. Thanks so much, Jessica. Can you hear me okay?
Mhm.
Okay. Well, since you were just on the topic of Medicaid, let me ask you a Medicaid question that came in, and it's about communicating about Medicaid to Trump voters. How can we communicate that cutting Medicaid doesn't reduce costs for you and your family? It may lower taxes, but increase insurance premiums because hospitals will demand higher premiums. Plus, hospitals are often the #2 employer in rural areas, and the cuts may cost them and likely jobs. What are good ways to communicate about it?
Well, I mean, I think you basically just said it, that basically when healthcare gets cut, that costs the government money. It costs the government money in emergency room, public hospital visits, in sicker Americans, medical debt that goes unpaid, businesses that shut down because hospitals have shut down. So, it is an economic drain on everybody around the person who has become uninsured. And so, not to mention, none of us working Americans are going to be saving money on taxes in this moment. And it's important to make people understand. So the Republicans are going to cut Medicaid to pay for tax cuts for them, not for you. You are not getting a tax cut if you make less than $400,000. In fact, because Trump is also claiming that these tariffs are to help offset his tax cuts, you're paying more. And that's true. Go do the research. The average American is going to spend about $4,000 more a year with these tariffs. That money, Trump has said, and other Republican lawmakers have said, is to offset the cost of the tax cuts. So it is a wealth transfer. So one way to talk about it to people is to say, when people lose health insurance, that brings the whole economy around them down. But the other thing to say is, you're not getting a tax cut under Trump. Period, full stop. You are not, unless you're very rich, in which case, yeah, you are. And even then, it's not going to be good for you and the people around you. But if you are making less than 400,000, you're paying more. Now, you are not paying less. So it's a lose-lose. It's a lose for you, and it's a lose for those other people. And I'll just close by saying, I always tell people this idea that a rising tide lifts all boats is really true. There's a reason that other countries provide healthcare for all of their citizens. Because when people are sick and untreated, that sickens the entire society. And it costs, it's expensive. So, I mean, if people find that hard to understand, I wouldn't know how else to explain it than that. But it's a good investment. Investing in your society is good for everyone.
Yep. Just another quick question that comes from your remarks. Can you explain your comment about people left the top of the ticket blank? Just the person would just like to understand what you were referring to there.
Sure. So there were a lot of people who voted in the presidential election who didn't vote for president. They just voted down ballot. So they were Democrats or left-leaning people who voted for Senate and Congress member. But I mean, I won't mince words about it. I think a lot of it had to do with the war in the Middle East, and people were very angry at Joe Biden about it. And so they were angry at Kamala Harris about it. And I think that there was a large number of people. And again, I don't blame them for their anger one way or another. Like, I don't want to get into that subject. It's too complicated and divisive, but I will say that leaving the top of the ticket blank, for whatever reason they did it, or just because they didn't like either choice or whatever, it gave Trump this idea that he won the popular vote. I mean, he did win the popular vote, but because a Republican president hasn't won the popular vote in 30 years, he, I think more than anything, has treated that like a mandate to do whatever he wants. You'll hear him say it all the time. I won the popular vote, first time in 30 years, because a lot of people left the top of the ticket blank. So
Okay.
that's
Okay, I'm going to turn now to questions that came in ahead of the session, and then I'll come back to the ones that have been in the Q&A. Mercedes asks, it feels great to protest and see more people speaking out, but people won't keep protesting forever. If Trump, like other dictators, is unaffected by public outrage and elections are rigged, then what?
Well, again, so far we have not seen elections be rigged, because so far we've won every election since Trump won in November, right? We won the Wisconsin election. We've won every other special election. We just won a special election in Iowa last week. We're overperforming by somewhere between 15 and 25 points in every election in Florida. So those elections were not rigged. So I'm not going to assume rigged elections when the elections I'm seeing are not rigged. So that I will put aside. And then, I mean, all I know is what the literature tells us is that the one thing that has always worked to take down a dictator is a popular movement. And again, I'm sure most of you are familiar with Erica Chenoweth, but 3.5% of the population, if you can get 3.5% of the population galvanized and out in the streets or participating in a general strike, that has, from her data, and this is a person who has done a large field of research on this, that has never failed to topple a dictator. So will the protests keep looking like Tesla takedowns? Or, I mean, no, everything is going to morph. It's going to have to. And no one knows exactly how. I don't have an answer for how this is going to, like, no one does. We are in completely uncharted territory. But what we do know is the experience of many other countries who have defeated totalitarianism. And it is always because there is a popular uprising. Right? We're not going to fight them with weapons and win. I mean, first of all, no one wants that. And secondly, they've got all the weapons. But these kind of peaceful, popular uprisings work, and they've worked over and over again. So we might have to keep protesting. And look, none of us want to be spending all our weekends this way, but that just might be what we have to do. We'll have to see. I think there will be some kind of general mass boycott as well. And Trump is going to do a lot of the work for us. You know, if he tanks the economy and keeps us in a recession for a long time, that's going to shift a lot of people against him very quickly. So we just have to wait and see and be ready to use our opportunities, you know?
Right. Okay, here's another one. Tina asked actually two questions. How do we get beyond the protesting and filing petitions and pursue legal actions against this extortion and treason?
I mean, I think we're seeing a lot of legal actions. We're seeing a tremendous amount of legal actions, and they're successful. Mostly, the courts have been one of the few bright spots, I think, in this situation, is that they have been working. We've seen Trump-appointed judges ruling against Trump, this past week, and then again with the North Carolina case. This is an amazing thing what happened with North Carolina. 6 months we've been fighting these people trying to steal this election in North Carolina, and the court just ruled in our favor, and it was a Trump-appointed judge. So, I mean, yes, I think at some point, like, would I like to see everybody who's breaking the law right now go to jail and be tried at least in a court of law? Yes. But again, that I file under like things for another day. So we're not there. What I do know right now is that if I have any extra money, I'm going to give it to the ACLU, and I'm going to give it to Democracy Forward, and I'm going to give it to the organizations that are suing day after day on everything, because they are doing God's work. I'm going to give it to Mark Elias or Elias, those people, because they are doing, like I said, doing the Lord's work right now. And I can't do it for them because I am not a lawyer. So I think supporting those organizations in any way we can is very important right now.
Right. And then Tina's other question was, what would be the most effective language to show MAGA that they're being duped?
I'm not super convinced that MAGA is winnable for the most part. I've never really tried to move MAGA voters. I think that most of them are pretty far in the I don't want to say in the cult, they're pretty far gone. So, and I've talked to actually the people at Navigator Polling. I go on their calls every week, and they do a lot of polls. And I asked them this question recently, and because they're showing that there are a chunk of people who voted for Trump. It's about 16%, I think, at this point, who do regret voting for him. But they're not mostly the MAGA faithful. Navigator divides Republican voters into non-MAGA Republican and MAGA Republican. And the MAGA Republicans are still totally with Trump. They will be with Trump. And I asked, what would take them away? And they were like, really, honestly, the ones who are really, really the base, nothing. So I don't try to change Trump voters. I just don't. 90 million people did not vote in the last election. Those are the people I'm interested in. Or the people who voted for Trump because they thought he really would bring prices down on day one. Those are the people who are now going, oh my God, what did I do? And those are the people who won the election for him. His base alone is not enough to do it. It was people who wanted a break on prices and thought he would give it to them. And those people are already falling away from him. They're not stupid people. They maybe don't pay a huge amount of attention, and they got lied to, and they believed the lies. But the Trump base, I don't know. I'm sure there are people who would have a great answer for that question. I don't engage with them. That's not my strong suit. I like to get people to vote who are I can talk to in a somewhat reasonable conversation. So,
all right,
I'm not your person for that.
Okay. We won't make you.
Yeah.
What are
I have my limitations.
Another question that came in ahead of time is, what are some recent wins against the Trump regime in your view?
Well, I mean, we've had almost every legal win, which is huge. We got the return of the gentleman from Vermont who was abducted at his immigration appointment. Great work by Representative Balint and other people in Vermont to get him back. We got all of the student visas that were revoked, reinstated. We got the giant women's medical project that Trump canceled, reinstated. We got, things like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau are, they've been killed, then they've been unkilled. The battle goes on. But a great deal, Janet Mills went up against Trump in Maine, and she won. He backed down. The thing about Trump that's pretty astonishing, actually, is he is really a classic bully. That when you turn around and get in his face, he actually almost always backs down. And so we've seen this happening over and over again. So no, we're not winning every fight, but we've won a lot. And he absolutely does back down. We just saw it happen with Maine. So I would say that those are a great deal of wins. I mean, I publish a list of wins every week in my newsletter on Sundays, and it's long. It's long. We're winning a lot. It's just that there are also devastating losses, and they're extremely grave. So you're not going to be jumping around and celebrating necessarily, because people are being disappeared. So that is, to me, is like, it's hard to even sleep knowing that that's happening. Families are being separated, all this stuff, but we're definitely beating him in lots of places. Most of what he's tried to sort of take apart, he's failed at. Now, a lot of stuff is still getting gutted and it's still bad. But like, what I tell people every time he does an executive order is, before you totally freak out about it, wait and see what the lawsuit determines. And I think we found, what, 70% of his executive orders or something have been overturned by courts. So, or maybe it's less, like 60%, but a lot of it is getting overturned. So those are the victories I've seen.
Great. Yeah, that's my favorite part of your of your weekly
Yeah.
writing, of course.
I think that's why most people subscribe. They just put up with
Yeah,
the
right.
just extra.
Well, you've talked about Medicaid, but otherwise, what do you think will happen with the big, beautiful budget, and how can we make an impact?
Well, that's the thing. I really don't know, because if we stop the Medicaid cuts, they have to find that money somewhere else, and it will be interesting to see where they try to get it. God forbid they just don't cut any more rich people's taxes. So yeah, I don't know. I think it is possible that we stop it. But I also, I'm not making promises, because this is all Trump wants in the world, is to extend these tax cuts. And this is all the Republicans, that's all they want for this entire presidential term, really, is to deport as many Black and brown people as they can, which is horrific in itself, and then to get tax cuts. That's their entire agenda. Well, and to like destroy the government. But I think if I were a betting person, what would I say? If I were a betting person, I think I would bet on us to stop the majority of the Medicaid cuts. But it's going to be hard, and I'm not sure. It's going to really come down to how hard we fight and how loud we get.
Yep. All right, we'll get loud.
Yeah.
You've been talking about how there will be a continued need for protesting and rallies and marches. But I got a question ahead of time, and also for Mary in the Q&A, having to do with the demographics of the people who are protesting. So what do you think about people's concerns that our protests seem to be led by older white women? It's definitely true for Evanston, and I think it is more generally.
Yeah, I think that is true. I think that I'm not going to try to speak for the Black community. I have seen things online to the effect that Black women in particular have decided that they are going to sit these out for a while. Obviously, I'm not going to speak like that's a monolithic community, but I believe that a lot of Black women feel like, first of all, look, we showed up. 92% of us, or 94% of us, voted for Kamala Harris. And we also don't want to put ourselves at risk right now. And so if that's the case, then yeah, white people have to step up. I'd like to see more white men, although I'm seeing quite a lot of men. And as for the young people, that I don't know as much. I'm seeing some, but I'm not entirely sure why we're not seeing more young people yet. I've tried to talk to my 15-year-old about it, but I haven't really received a satisfying answer yet. I think there are some. And, but, they also, as MJ tells me, my kid, they may be protesting in other spaces, like they might be doing other things. But yes, I would agree that our protests that I've been at about 5 Tesla takedowns and 3 or 4 other major protests. And yeah, it's mostly older white people. And for right now, I mean, for one thing, we have the privilege and the relative safety. I mean, no one is 100% safe, but we're, mostly citizens, and whiteness gives us a great deal of protection. And so, yeah, right now we have to show up. It is on us to do that.
Right. So for the 4th of July, Simon Rosenberg is suggesting we do something. We have special events in addition to parades and signs and such. Any ideas to share with us that you've heard or that you can come up with spontaneously?
I haven't really thought about that yet, because I've been thinking a lot about the June 14th event.
Yeah, that's our problem too.
Is that June 14th or June 16th? The No Kings event.
14th.
14th, yeah. But I think it's a great idea. I think that really trying to take back patriotism, we've talked about taking back our flag for years now in this movement, but I feel like in this moment, really seizing upon the flag And, you know, I did a video where I started out by saying, like, if you have taken the Pledge of Allegiance in your life and meant it even a little, I want you to listen to what I'm about to say. And I am talking specifically to those of you who drive around with big American flags hanging from your pickup trucks. Like, if you claim to be a patriot, I want you to listen to me. And then I talked about the sort of fascism that was happening. But I think we have an opportunity to appeal to these flag waving, you know, America people and really say, like, that's a place I might have a conversation with a MAGA. Like, let's talk about the Constitution, right? Well, you're waving the flag. So do you love the Constitution? I guess you must, right? So let's talk about the Constitution. Is it optional? Because right now Trump is treating it as literally a multiple choice. You know, is that what you mean when you wave the flag? Like, when you pledge allegiance to the flag, are you pledging allegiance to the Constitution? Because if you are, join us. And I think that is where it is important that we have an open door. We're not going to get every Trump supporter or even most Trump supporters, but we'll get a few. They are going to wake up. I hear anecdotally about people saying, oh my God, the guy who's had a Trump flag in front of his house for 6 years just took it down. I mean, there are going to be those people. And when they do finally realize how incredibly duped they've been, we're going to have to welcome them. Even though, like, yes, of course, like, what the hell is the matter with you and all that? But, like, we got to bring them in because we need them. We're going to need everybody in this fight. And that is when that flag needs to become our shared symbol, not a divisive symbol, but our shared. We've got to grab it back as a shared symbol. But that was not a good answer to your question, but that's what I have to say.
Well, I think it was. I think it was. Another question that came in early. What are your thoughts on the wisdom of a general strike?
Oh, I'm so for it. I've been ready for that for a long time. I've now met with the people who created the General Strike website. I think it is important for everybody to sign that strike card and get, and that's just generalstrikeus.org, I think is the website. I think we need to be ready for it. I think it's going to be hard to organize. We're a very big country, but I think that if things get bad enough, that is absolutely what we're going to have to do. And I think they can be wildly effective, but it starts out with talking to people, you know, finding out who can be brought into that movement, getting them to sign a strike card on that website. So at least there's one place where all the email addresses are. And yeah, I think that economic strikes are powerful. Work strikes are powerful. So I'm a huge advocate for that. And as we've seen, look at Elon Musk. We've gutted his company, and he's supposedly, and I think he actually will probably leave government slowly but surely because Trump doesn't like him anymore. And he's like, we're killing him. We're killing his business. We're killing Target's business. I would like to see us kill Amazon's business. That is, you know, I've been boycotting Amazon for a long time, but I would like to see that become the next big national boycott because we look at what we do. Like, Target's foot traffic is down for 11 weeks straight. Their stock prices are plunging. We've, you know, 71% on Tesla, and, you know, it's powerful. We have massive, massive spending and buying power, and we should be using it. So I encourage people to think that way. And also because of the tariffs, to really support small businesses right now, because they're going to need our support to stay afloat.
Okay. I'll take one more question from my list that was submitted previously. And that's sort of a summing up, I guess, and then we'll switch to the Q&A. What do you think are the most important actions people should be taking right now in the face of so many Trump actions? It's kind of hard to focus. What would your advice be?
Yeah. I think it's important to be part of a group. I think that being in a group, for one thing, is an important thing because we need community right now. It's really important that we be in community with people that we are doing this work with, because it's hard and it's scary and it's exhausting, and it's helpful to be with people that we feel compatible with, like you all are doing here, but even and in person too. I think that creating basically a wall of noise in our lawmakers' offices right now is really imperative. I think Republicans should never, ever stop hearing their phones ring with people who are furious about what's happening, furious, and asking them where the hell is their oath of office? What happened to their oath of office? Like, they should never stop hearing that question. And for Democrats, we should be pushing them constantly. The ones who are doing great, we should be calling and thanking and saying, please keep going and please keep protecting Medicaid or whatever. And those who are like, a lot of them are just kind of, they're fine. Their heart is more or less in the right place, but they're a little tepid. Those need to be pushed. Do more, fight harder, get more aggressive. So I think phone calls are really important. I think this consciousness about where we're shopping and how we're shopping is actually really a big part of this. Continuing to show up at protests and just continuing to look for opportunities to push back publicly or privately. And then there are going to be moments where we're just like, today's just going to have to be a day where I live my life. Like, I can't be in constant protest mode. We can't let them take away our lives, right? Like, if I'm spending every minute doing this and forgetting to hang out with my husband and my kid, I am giving the Republicans something I do not want to give them. I'm giving them this time in my life. I'm taking that from my family and giving it to Donald Trump. I am not going to do that. So be with people you love and make sure you're seeing art and seeing beauty and doing things that bring you joy, because it will fill you up so that you can come back to the fight. And again, this is not a fight that's going to be won in a week. Barring something unforeseen, we're going to be in this for a while. And so practicing sort of endurance and pacing ourselves is going to be really important. But I do think those phone calls and the constant pressure on the lawmakers right now is a very, very important thing. And then, of course, as we get closer to those elections in November, to make sure that we not just win in New Jersey and Virginia, but destroy. We have to win elections by margins that are absurd. And we can. So that's a really important thing to do. But we're still a few months out, but they'll creep up on us pretty quickly. And yeah, and I'm sure I'm not thinking of everything we should be doing, but those are some important things to be doing.
No, it's great. It's just great to have some focus, because it's hard right now. Let's see. So I'll switch to the Q&A now. Patricia asks, my Florida rep, Gus Billerica, sends newsletters that are from another planet. My senators, Rick Scott and Ashley Moody, never answer the phone or return calls. Should I keep trying to contact them? It feels so futile. Should I instead call Democratic reps or senators from other states?
Well, what I was told by Indivisible when I first joined is what I tell people too, which is that we're really not encouraged to call other lawmakers just because they're not going to record our calls. They are sometimes, like I told people to call Mike Lawler a couple days ago because I was furious about what happened at his town hall. And I thought, he should hear from people all over the country. But in general, like, they're not going to record our calls if we're not constituents. So it's a little bit of a waste of time. Sometimes I will recommend calling a lawmaker who is not our representative if they run a certain committee or they're like a minority leader, but in general, they're just not going to record it. So I do think it's still worth reaching out to your Republican lawmakers, no matter how awful they are, because what I'm hearing anecdotally is no matter how much they're pretending that they're not hearing us, they are hearing us. And it may not manifest by them going like, screw Trump, I'm joining the Democrats, obviously. But like, it may just be that they don't go quite as far on something that like otherwise would be really awful. Like, we may not even know how we're affecting them, but what I do know is that if nobody calls them to say, this is horrible, what's happening, they're going to be like, I guess people don't care. So what's the problem? I'm just going to keep taking my paycheck and doing what I'm doing. So yeah, I know Rick Scott and Ted Cruz is another one. Like, they don't answer their phones. They don't have voicemail. You should still be able to get through to their offices using that contact us form on their website, which does require you to enter an address so that they know you're a constituent, and you can continue to contact them that way. And I hope you will. They work for you. So the fact that they're ignoring you is on them, but it doesn't mean that you should not continue to reach out to them and protest in front of their offices and do whatever else. Shame them on social media. Hold an empty chair town hall. Indivisible has great toolkits on that. Those kinds of things, you put that up on social media and it's shaming to them. Even, that Rick Scott won't answer his phone call. He won't show up for a town hall. He's an absentee senator. And how much are we paying him? $250,000 a year? Like, you can make a whole thing out of it. That's how they got Mike Lawler to do a town hall in New York's 17th district, is they were putting up missing signs all over the district with his silhouette because he wouldn't do a town hall. And so he finally did them. And now he's getting his ass handed to him in his town halls. But, so.
Someone recently asked me what I thought about calling the Supreme Court. So I'll ask you for your thoughts on that.
I mean, we can reach them using ResistBot, which I think you guys are aware of ResistBot. It's a wonderful tool to contact your lawmakers, and they do have a prompt. I think it's the word courts. And if you send that to them, they'll allow you to send a letter to the public liaison of the Supreme Court. I've done it a couple of times in my newsletter. They're not supposed to be subject to public opinion. That's their whole thing. Now, of course, we know that they are subject to their donors' opinion. But I probably would say probably not. I would think if you asked like Indivisible, if you asked Leah and Ezra, they would be like, I wouldn't bother. So I do bother occasionally anyway, but it's probably a waste of my time. But, letters to the editor, on the other hand, now that is effective. And I have actually had a letter to the editor published in, I can't remember, it was the New York Times or the Washington Post, about the Supreme Court. And that felt really good because I felt like there was a very good likelihood that somebody on that court maybe saw that. So letters to the editor, that's good.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay. Next question comes from Linda in the Q&A. What about #fascist47's transgender ban? We all know who that is. What can we do? NPR says there are about 4,000 transgender people currently serving on active duty right now.
I thought that ban had been blocked by the courts, no?
I'm not sure.
I thought that had been blocked by the courts. I could be wrong.
Okay.
I'm sorry, this is Linda. The Supreme Court just got rid of that block.
Oh, did it?
Still going through the courts, but they got rid of the block. It happened.
Did that happen today?
Today, yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't seen that yet. Yeah, that's unfortunate. Yeah, that's too bad. That's terrible. Again, we've that is awful. And we have seen the Supreme Court disappoint us over and over again. So I'm not surprised that they've disappointed us one more time. And we know that historically the Supreme Court has made horrible decisions. Dred Scott coming immediately to mind. And patriotic Americans have lived through those times and not given up. And they have continued to work. And eventually those decisions have been revealed to be awful and unsustainable, and they've been overturned. But yeah, that's terrible. I have a trans teenager, so obviously it's terrible. And it's one of those things, what can we do about that right now? Probably not a lot. We've got to get Republicans out of office, and then we can start to change some laws. So it's tough. It's going to be a lot of bitter pills. It's just, there's going to be a lot of stuff that happens that's just going to suck.
Yeah, and that's why we worked so hard on the election, but
Yep.
we
Exactly.
fell a little short.
Yep. That's right.
Yeah. So the next question from the Q&A is about being proactive. If we only deal with what's happening in the present, is there some way to stay proactive? Project 2025 has a strategy. What can individuals do to stop or slow the chaos ahead of them doing it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that there are a lot of organizations that were working to plan for this moment, and that's why we have a lot of the ACLU and other organizations that have been ready to go to court right away. So there were people who were preparing for this moment, even though they hoped it wouldn't come, and are dealing with it as best they can. But I do agree that we need some sort of Project 2028 or whatever, Project 2029. We need a clear-cut vision for the future of when we start to get out of this. What do we want to do? We need to entice people not just with a "we're not Trump" message, but like, what are we going to do? And absolutely, there's a place for that. I absolutely think we should be and must be envisioning a future and figuring out how to build a future that is different than our past. And that I encourage anybody to spend their time doing that. There are great organizations that are, policy organizations or think tanks where that kind of stuff is happening. I only advocate against ruminating on things that we don't know that are going to happen that are negative. But as far as building a positive vision, yeah, we have to. We have to, and we should. It's terribly important. Otherwise, what are we doing this for?
Okay. Jill asks, how do we get unity among the Democrats? Moderates and progressives are still divided, and there are consistently Dems voting with Republicans on appointments, for example.
Yeah.
Whereas the Republicans consistently vote together.
Yeah, well, the Republicans don't always consistently vote together. I mean, witness what's happening with the bill right now. It's not, I think we have a habit of thinking like the Democrats are such a mess and Republicans are not, but Republicans are also a mess. It's just a different kind of mess, but they do manage a sort of lockstep a lot of the time that we don't necessarily, because we're a big tent and because we encourage people to think for themselves and because everybody who's not a MAGA at this point is in our tent. That's a lot of people. Oops, what just happened? Oh, I just lost my light. Okay. Well, it just got a little dark, but we're going to have to deal with that because this just went out. But I think that I don't know exactly how. I think that we just do our best trying to unify around things that we agree on instead of focusing on the things that we might disagree on. So I really try to spend a lot of time focused on the fact that we all want to tax billionaires, the fact that we all want to protect reproductive freedom. We all want common sense gun laws. We all want to address climate change. We all want, to do something about our broken, outdated immigration system and fix it and have there be a fair, equitable way for immigrants to come into this country. We want paid family leave, right? We want Medicare for all or some kind of affordable healthcare. We want affordable housing. Listen to all of that. That's all stuff that I would wager a guess 95% of Democrats and a very large amount of Republicans would agree with. So how do we deal with the fact that we have schisms on certain other things? I mean, I wish I hadn't. That would be great if I had that answer. One thing I do is try to just focus on the things I know we agree on, because there are a lot of them. And, as for the things that we disagree on, that's hard. I mean, it's hard when we start fighting. But I've been saying for a long time, like, if we can't stay unified or find the places where we can stand unified, we will all be destroyed. And so at some point, every single one of us is going to have to make a commitment to stand unified, at least on the ground where we know there is unity. We can agree to disagree on some things, as long as we are finding enough agreement in our common beliefs that we can stand and fight together. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah, great. Rebecca asked, do you think that the economic messaging, like Trump is grifting for his own benefit and cutting taxes for fellow billionaires, but breaking the economy and hurting your pocketbook, is the best approach for pulling folks to our side ahead of the midterms?
Well, as opposed to what? I'd like to know what the alternative message is there.
Maybe disrespecting the Constitution, let's say.
Oh, well, I mean, I think it's got to be both and. I think that we have to argue both things. Because I think that, again, not to keep dwelling on polling, but I really like to read polling and like focus groups and see what people are feeling. And like, again, Americans overwhelmingly across parties support due process and are very, very alarmed by Trump's attacks on due process. Republicans, independents, and Democrats. So we'd be dumb not to talk about due process. It's also the right thing to talk about. So we have to talk about due process and the attacks on the Constitution. And I mean, the good news is that Trump is terrible on everything. So there's nothing he really has to even stand on. He's just bad. So yeah, he's attacking the Constitution and he's destroying the economy. Why would you vote for that? And why would you vote for anybody who's in his party who's still supporting him? So that's, yeah. I just got a funny message. Please confirm your speaking language. Oh, I see. I'm still speaking English.
That's from Zoom?
Yeah.
That's weird.
I know, I've never seen that before.
No, me neither.
So anyway, yeah, I think that we can run on both. And by the time we get to the midterms, God only knows where we're going to be. I mean, it's such a long way away. I mean, we'll see what's most relevant at that time. But a lot more stuff, if he continues this way, a lot more stuff will have broken, unfortunately. And so it will just be like, look at this, he broke. Look at that, he broke. Look at this, I mean, I think there will be quite a lot to run on by then, is my guess.
Yeah. Okay. Shelley asks, would you recommend many smaller protests and marches and rallies or fewer but larger ones?
Well, it doesn't matter what I recommend. I think that what people are doing is many smaller. In Los Angeles, where I live, for example, the first Women's March, before people were thinking about doing lots of mini things, was massive. We had massive, massive numbers of people in downtown Los Angeles. Since then, every subsequent Women's March, there have been like a gazillion offshoots. So we've got the Studio City Women's March, we've got the Burbank, we've got the Glendale. And it used to really, really drive me crazy. Like, can't we just all go to one place and make bigger numbers? But I sort of realized with hands off, there's something else very powerful about having so many different marches. It makes us more visible. It makes it feel more like a small town everywhere USA movement. And it is what's happening. So I've stopped fighting it. I just sort of feel like, well, yes, I mean, it's great to have lots of, smaller numbers of huge marches, but the reality is most people can't afford to fly to DC for a march. And a lot of people are not going to go to a march if they have to drive an hour and find parking. Whereas if it's right up the street, they'll go. So I think whatever gets the most people out into the street is good. So that's why I love the Tesla takedowns. I love them because they're just these little pocket protests and they're great. And they show the world that we're out there fighting. They're a wonderful recruitment tool. People have gotten so smart about printing up little flyers with like, hey, do you want to do more? Here's some QR codes for, 5 calls and Indivisible. And some people have even put my newsletter on there. And it's great. You're sort of bringing people in and showing them how to take the next step. There are other people who are doing protests on overpasses. That's great. I just think right now it is about, and Heather Cox Richardson has talked about this too, just sort of proof of concept, just showing people that we're out there. I have a sign in front of my house that says free Kilmar Abrego, Garcia Abrego, just to let people know that you're not the only one feeling the way you feel, because believe me, most Americans are very uncomfortable with what's happening, but they may not know that their neighbors are too until they see their neighbors. And then it might make them feel a little bit more courageous to speak up. So.
Great. That's great. Okay. Another person asked, I'm going to have to apologize to the audience. We will not be getting through all the questions. No, there's no way. So many things to ask you, Jessica, but that you can make sure to subscribe to her Substack and you can hear from her almost every day.
Yeah.
So I'll just do a couple more questions.
Okay.
One person asked, are there voices that you know of that will engage young men and those who felt disregarded in 2024? Progressives and Democrats need to find voices like Joe Rogan to talk to people who are in the trades and may or may not be on Obamacare.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Democrats are working very, very hard right now to find those voices and amplify them. And again, this content creator convention that I'm at right now is very, very encouraging because I'm definitely one of 2 women my age here. Everybody else is significantly younger, and it's great. There's a lot of young guys, and most of the people here are not straight political content creators. They make comedy, or they do cooking, or they do beauty, makeup stuff. But they're learning, the Democratic Party and the Democratic sort of organizing establishment are learning how to bring them in and say, hey, we know your values align with ours, and occasionally you talk about politics. We really want to encourage that, and we want to help you. We want to give you messaging tools. We want to bring you into our fold and make you part of our movement. And you don't have to talk about politics all the time, just like Joe Rogan doesn't talk about politics all the time. In fact, he doesn't talk about it often. And people go to him for other things, but they hear when he talks about politics. And so, yes, I think the Democrats are working very hard to build that and to bring in those men. And Midas Touch is doing it to a certain extent. It is building. I'm encouraged by where we are. We have a lot of ground to make up. But at least the journey has begun. And I mean, if you could see what's happened here at Trending Up, you'd be very, very encouraged. It's deeply exciting. And these kids, which is what they feel like to me, there's probably 200 of them here. They're wonderful. They're so smart. They're so bright. They're so clever. Every one of them has such a great voice, and they're really good at what they do. So as we grow this community, I feel very encouraged about what we can accomplish.
That's great. That's wonderful. Okay, one last question. We have not talked about voter suppression. And Kathleen asked, how do we combat Trump's election interference executive orders?
Well, again, unless I missed something in the news today, I believe that a lot of that was blocked by a court. So again, there's nothing to combat if the courts block it. And I believe the courts have blocked most of what he was trying to do in that executive order. So his executive orders are largely unconstitutional. And so again, if the Supreme Court says that that's okay, yes, then we really have a problem. But I'm not sure that it seems like that was fairly thoroughly blocked, and that people were fairly confident that that would even get blocked if it went further up. So for now, I don't know that there's anything to deal with there. He tried to do the SAVE Act via executive order, and you can't do that because states are in charge of elections, not the federal government.
Right.
So we've got plenty to fight voter suppression wise, but I'm not sure that executive order is mostly going to get implemented. And by the way, I saw somebody say that I love Aaron Parnas. He is here. Aaron is great.
Great.
Yeah, and he's great. People love him.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I wish we could keep going because this has been a fantastic conversation. But I think we have to let you go with many, many thanks. And we have just a few announcements from our sponsoring chapters of Indivisible.
Okay.
Okay.
So do you want me, I should go, right? Or do you want me to stay on?
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
You can go. I don't want to
Get thanked more.
Okay.
You're
right.
fantastic.
Thank you,
Thanks so much for coming, and have a great evening.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. See you later. Thank you for everything you're all doing. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. You're inspirational.
I hope it was okay. All right. I'll see you later. Bye.
Okay. I am just putting in the chat that that because one of the signups happened to have Kitty's link instead of the registration link, if you're came into this as Kitty and you want a copy of the recording and a copy of the slides, please send us an email at indivisibleevanston@gmail.com, and we'll make sure it gets to you, because a lot of you are showing up as Kitty Connect. I think it was a faulty link in one of the signups. I just wanted to, I will send these slides out. I don't want to take a lot of your time. I'm going to share my screen for just a minute. I just wanted you to know who our co-sponsors are if you want to follow up. Jessica's links, I'll send out these slides. We put them in the chat all night long, but here's her information on how to get to her Substack daily newsletter, which you can get for free, and then her podcast as well. And then this slides, which I will send, is just some information on these sponsoring groups: Indivisible Illinois with their link, NWSOFA with their meetings and their links, Indivisible Skokie, Morton Grove. Anyone who's interested in joining can click on some of these links. Indivisible DuPage, which is Linda's group. They have Facebook Blue Sky accounts. Indivisible Chicago, and here's the links there. So and Indivisible Evanston, and some of our events. Well, this was mentioned already. We've got a big Hands Across Chicago event. We're working across a bunch of groups to make a 30-mile chain from Aurora to Chicago on Sunday, May 18th. So please sign up for that. And then we're all planning something on June 14th, the No Kings Rally everywhere. So please sign up for something, do something, sign up for Jessica for sure, because she truly is inspirational. And if you, once again, if you are showing up as Kitty on your login,
Sorry about that, my bad.
somehow a link went bad somewhere.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I can bring back the last slide. Someone asked here. Let me share. I didn't want to rush you out of here. I just don't want to hold. Let's see. So this is the Hands Across Chicago. Actually, can someone here? I can. Let me grab that and put it in the chat. There it is. I think this is going to be a tremendous event, and I think it will get a lot of press because it's a little bit different than what people have been doing before. And I think everyone, that's Hands Across Chicago. I think everyone is trying to come up with something that will get press attention and will not be undercounted, because that tends to happen all the time, that it's undercounted. And oh, I do want to say on the Hands Across Chicago, our giant 33-foot chicken that was present at the Tesla takedown on the 26th will be making an appearance at one end or the other of Hands Across Chicago. So, and please, once again, shoot us an email if you want a copy of the recording. The email address is indivisibleevanston@gmail.com, and we will make sure that you get a copy of that. So thank you very much for coming. Jessica's awesome. You can subscribe and pay, or you can get it for free. So I would encourage everyone. She always has a list at least once a week of all the good things that have happened. And sometimes that's like the best thing you can possibly have. So thanks everybody for coming, and have a great evening.